Welcome to our deep dive into the world of AI art and its impact on the art world. We're diving into a collection of YouTube videos. Think artists, designers, and tech experts all wrestling with this new wave of creativity. Get ready, it gets pretty intense.
It really does. It's a fascinating time to be following this, isn't it? We're not just looking at pretty pictures here. We're talking about the very essence of artistic creation and what it means to be an artist in the age of AI.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why we're here to break it all down for you. We're talking copyright, the whole debate around inspiration versus outright theft, and this crazy thing called data laundering. Seriously, it's like something out of a spy movie.
It's quite the rabbit hole we're going down. But by the end of this deep dive, you'll have a solid grasp on the ethical dilemmas swirling around AI art. And more importantly, what it all means for the future of creativity.
Exactly. So let's start with something I think we can all relate to. Remember last year when everyone and their dog was suddenly a mermaid or a pirate on social media?
The Lensa AI craze. It was a real aha moment, wasn't it? Suddenly, this technology was in everyone's hands and the world went art crazy. It really showed just how fast AI art is moving.
And it's not just Lensa. Platforms like Midjourney are exploding in popularity. You can literally type in a few words and get a masterpiece in seconds. It's amazing. But it also raises a big question. Is it inspiration or is AI straight up stealing from artists?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right. Where do we draw the line between inspiration and flat-out theft? It's a question we're still wrestling with today, especially with all this talk about fair use and how it applies to AI art.
Exactly. And in these videos, we're seeing both sides of the story. On the one hand, you have the tech folks, who are all about AI's potential, even saying it's creating original art. On the other hand, we're hearing from artists who are feeling deeply uneasy. Their styles, which they've spent years developing, are being replicated in seconds.
It's going to feel pretty unsettling to see your creative fingerprint so easily copied. And speaking of copying, one of the biggest concerns we're seeing is this thing called style mimicry. Midjourney actually has a feature that lets you mimic the styles of specific artists, even those who aren't super famous.
It's a bit like saying, hey, I like your voice, mind if I just sample it and make a hit song without you? But in this case, it's visual language, and the implications are huge.
Imagine pouring your heart into a piece, only to see it replicated in seconds.
It really makes you wonder about the future of artistic individuality. If AI can copy anyone's style, how do artists maintain control over their creative voice? And then there are the practical dangers. Forgery, fraud, even identity theft. Things could get really messy.
And this whole issue gets even more complex when you bring in something called data laundering, which is where AI companies are getting into some pretty murky territory. Imagine a company taking your old clothes, claiming they're for research, then turning around and selling them for profit. That's essentially data laundering in AI.
No, that is a term I haven't heard before. I'm definitely curious to learn more about that. What exactly is going on?
Okay, so it turns out companies like Stability AI are being accused of using nonprofits or research projects as a cover to gather massive amounts of data, including tons of copyrighted material.
And they're then using that data to create their own commercial products. That's a bit cheeky, isn't it?
It is, and it's causing a lot of controversy, especially when you look at the contents of some of these data sets. It's a bit hypocritical, wouldn't you say?
A bit. It's massively hypocritical. It raises a huge red flag about transparency and control. Artists are basically being told, we're going to use your work and you can opt out if you want, but we've already profited from it.
It's not a good look.
Yeah.
And it leads to a fundamental question. Can AI development truly be ethical without artists having a say in how their work is used? It's a conversation that needs to happen, and fasted.
Absolutely. And speaking of conversations, let's shift gears for a moment and focus on the human side of things. I'm curious to hear what these artists and designers are experiencing firsthand as AI art becomes more and more prevalent.
You know, that's what really struck me in these videos. The emotional toll this is taking on artists is huge. One designer talks about how his friends, especially those with distinct styles, feel like their entire creative identity is being siphoned off.
I can imagine it's got to feel like a violation, like someone's stealing a part of them.
Exactly. They've spent years honing their craft. And now anyone can type in a prompt and get something similar in seconds. It makes you wonder, if AI can do this, what's the point of all those years of practice and struggle?
Right. It's like saying, why bother learning to play an instrument when you can just use auto-tune? But art is so much more than just the finished product.
And this is where the emotional impact starts to bleed into real-world concerns.
That's a scary thought. Imagine someone creating bad art in your style and everyone thinking it's yours.
Nightmare scenario.
It really makes you think about the pace of this change. It's like we've hit fast forward on the evolution of art, and the implications are hard to wrap your head around.
And here's where it gets even more unsettling. They actually demonstrated how, even if an artist's work wasn't part of the initial training data, you can simply upload a few examples of their style, and the AI can identify similar works in its database and generate something really close.
It's almost like the shadow training is happening in the background. And even if you try to opt out, your work could still be indirectly influencing the AI.
Right, and we don't know if those user-uploaded images are then being added to the AI's training data, but some people are speculating that they're being used to improve the model.
If that's true, it's pretty sneaky. Users are unknowingly contributing to this data laundering without realizing it.
Can you imagine the sheer volume of data we're talking about? It's like they're trying to download the entire internet.
It's like they want to create a digital replica of the entire world. And they're not being too picky about where they get the building blocks. And when you consider the potential for misuse, it gets pretty scary. It really highlights the lack of oversight and ethical considerations in this whole AI gold rush. It seems like some of these companies are so focused on getting ahead that they're not even stopping to think about the potential consequences.
But here's the interesting thing. It's not just artists who are raising concerns. Even some experts within the AI industry are starting to speak out about these questionable practices.
It sounds like there's a growing awareness of the ethical minefield they're stepping into.
Exactly. In some of these videos, experts are expressing their discomfort with how these companies are handling data and releasing models without proper safeguards. They're calling for more ethical data collection methods. Things like using only public domain data or creating systems where artists can opt in and get paid for the use of their work.
That seems like a reasonable ask, doesn't it? Give artists control over their work and compensate them fairly.
Absolutely. And there's this really interesting idea that keeps coming up. What if AI companies focused on building ethical AI models and then license those models to companies or individuals who want to use them?
Interesting. Almost like a fair trade system for AI models.
Right. One artist even proposed building a model entirely on public domain data, and then giving artists the option to license their work and style to make the model better. It would give artists a way to make money and would ensure that the AI is developed ethically.
That sounds like a win-win. But it also raises a big question. Would an ethical AI model, one trained only on data that's unethically sourced, be as good as the models trained on billions of images scraped from the internet?
That is the question, isn't it? Some folks argue that the quality might initially be lower. But as more artists choose to contribute their work, the gap could close. It would require a huge shift in thinking, but it's definitely a solution worth exploring.
It really highlights the power of collective action. Artists have a voice, and they need to use it to shape the development of AI in a way that benefits everyone.
And speaking of the future, let's dive into some of the predictions about how AI art will impact the art industry itself and what it all means for the future of human creativity.
Now that's a conversation I'm eager to have. There are so many different viewpoints out there, from optimistic visions of AI as a creative partner to dystopian fears of machines replacing human artists.
There's a lot to unpack, that's for sure. So let's start with the optimists. What are some of the positive outcomes they foresee as AI art becomes more integrated into the creative process?
I'm ready to hear some good news. Tell me about the exciting potential of AI art.